Hare Krishna. Let us understand Bhagavad Gita chapter by chapter, section by section. To begin with, let us offer our prayers to our spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of ISKCON, and to the Supreme Lord. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we will be understanding the second section of the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, entitled Karma Yoga. This second section is from shloka number 17 to shloka number 35. This section is entitled Liberated Souls Also Perform Duties. So let us understand this section. Lord Krishna continues to instruct Arjuna. Yastvatmaratirev syad atmatriptascha manavaha atmanyeva cha santushtas tasya karyam na vidyate. One who is, however, taking pleasure in the self, who is illumined in the self, who rejoices in and is satisfied with the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. Krishna had explained about the system he had set up so that we can live happily in this material world. Lord Krishna had set up a system that we human beings perform yajnas, and by the performance of yajnas as recommended in the Vedic scriptures, we could please the devatas who are in charge of supplying various necessities of life for our peaceful and happy living, and in that way please the Supreme Lord, and gradually we elevate spiritually and ultimately return back to Godhead. So, and also Krishna had explained that one has to perform his prescribed duty according to his own acquired nature. So in this section, Krishna is describing about those who are self-satisfied, those souls who are beyond the influence of modes of material nature. They don't have any duties to perform within this material world. So Krishna is explaining, Yastu atmaratireva syad atmatriptascha manavaha atmanyeva cha santushtas tasya karyam na vidyate. Because the soul's natural function is to lovingly serve the Supreme Lord, he has already achieved his original constitutional position as an eternal servant of Krishna. Therefore, he has no duties to perform in this material world. So Krishna is telling, Yastu atmaratir eva syad atmatriptascha manavaha atmanyeva cha santushtas tasya karyam na vidyate. For one who takes pleasure in the self, who is illumined in the self, who rejoices in and is satisfied with the self, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. So very nicely Krishna has explained the highest perfection one can achieve in one's life. So Krishna further continues explaining, Naiva tasya kritenartho na kriteneha kaschana na chasya sarva bhuteshu kaschid arthavyapashrayah. A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. So a self-realized soul knows that he is eternal part of Krishna. He is eternally dependent on the Supreme Lord Krishna for his maintenance. So he has no duties to perform in this material world. Just like a small baby, it is fully surrendered to its parents. If the mother feeds it, it takes its milk. If the mother bathes it, it becomes cleansed. So for every need, the baby is fully dependent on its father and mother. So it's fully, completely surrendered. In the same way, a self-realized soul knows that I am nothing without the Supreme Lord. I cannot independently live. I cannot independently do anything without the sanction, without the mercy of the Supreme Lord. He fully depends on everything for his maintenance and for his livelihood, and whatever duties he performs just for the sake of pleasing the Supreme Lord. So he is fully surrendered, and for such surrendered souls, the Lord himself maintains those devotees. Krishna says in the upcoming chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. Those who constantly meditate on the Supreme Lord with love and devotion, Krishna says, I personally take care of all their needs. Yogakshemam vahamyaham. So these are the symptoms of pure devotees of Lord Krishna. So Krishna says, Tasmadasaktas satatam karyam karma samacharam asakto hyacharan karma paramapnoti purushaha. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the Supreme. So generally, we work with the results in the mind. We want to enjoy the results, and then we work for achieving those results. These are called fruitive actions. If we get those fruits, we become very elated. If we don't get the desired fruit of our action, we become morose and sad. So this is what is the general tendency. But Krishna is telling that without being attached to the fruits, tasmad asakta satatam karyam karma samachara. One should act as a matter of duty. If one is a teacher, he has to do his duty of teaching without being attached to the results. Generally, those who are fruitive, those who conduct especially coaching classes, they want their students to achieve the topmost rank. They want the entire batch to be at the topmost. And they have so many such desires. But Krishna is telling one should act as a matter of duty. One has to, of course, encourage students to study well and put their efforts, but they should not be attached to the result that our students alone should be the top in the whole examination. No, one has to do his duty as a teacher, and a student has to perform his duty as a student and try to do as much as possible he can and leave the results to the Supreme Lord. So one has to be detached. So, for by working without attachment, one attains the Supreme. So the whole idea is Krishna wants to train us to be detached from this material world, to be detached from this material body, and develop attachment to the Supreme Lord Krishna himself. So in order to go to the spiritual world and live with Krishna, we should give up attachment to this world. We have to give up attachment to the enjoyment in this material world. Here, those who are in ignorance, they think that I should achieve, I should work hard, I should be great, I should be appreciated by everyone. Everyone is self-centered here, and they want to be glorified and they want to be the center of attraction here. That is the material disease. Actually, we are all not great. Only Supreme Lord Krishna is great because everything belongs to him. Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam Yatkincha Jagatyam Jagat. Whatever is there in this existence belongs to the Supreme Lord Krishna. So he is great. We are all tiny parts of him. We are all energies of the Supreme Lord. So we have to be connected with him as his loving servants. That is the greatness we can achieve. Greatness of a soul is to be eternally loving Krishna and serving Krishna favorably. That is the greatness of a soul. As a soul, I can be great as a pure devotee of Krishna. I cannot be great as Supreme Lord. So this is the ignorance in the material world. In this modern society, people want to become independently great. Therefore, there is so much of competition and enmity. One party blaming the other party. Even in the politics, we see how every party hates the other party. Ultimately, they don't focus on the development of nation or any projects for uplifting the people in general. They don't know the meaning of upliftment. They're very much worried only about bodily comforts. They don't at all know about spiritual elevation of the masses. So in that way, the entire society actually is in ignorance because of self-centeredness. They all want to become great and there is tough competition. So Krishna says one should act as a matter of duty without attachment to results and develop detachment to this body, to this world, and develop attachment to the Supreme Lord Krishna. Learn how great is Krishna, how wonderful is Krishna, how loving is Krishna. By knowing these great qualities of Krishna, our loving feelings will arise within our heart, awaken within our heart, and we will naturally feel like always thinking of Krishna and always serving Krishna. That gives greatest joy to the soul. So Krishna further says, Karmanaiva hi samsiddhim masthitha janakadayah lokasangrahamevapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. Even kings like Janaka and others attained the perfectional stage by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. So Krishna is giving an example of Janaka Maharaja, who was the father of Mother Sita. So Janaka Maharaja, he was a pure devotee. He had no duties to perform in this world. Still, to educate his citizens, he would go and fight. To teach that in order to maintain law and order, fighting is essential. And he would encourage his Kshatriya kings and other soldiers to fight vigorously to protect law and order and to protect citizens. So, even though he personally had no duties to perform, he performed his duty as a Kshatriya to set an example. Yad yad acharati shreshtastat devetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastat anuvartate. Whatever action is performed by a great man, common men follow in his footsteps. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So Janaka Maharaja, he was a leader. So he set an example that everyone should perform his prescribed duties without attachment to results. So Krishna is clearly telling, Yad yad acharati shreshtas tatta devetaro janahan. Whatever action is performed by a great man, common men follow in his footsteps. Sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate. Whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So we should follow in the footsteps of great authorities. And who are the great authorities? Authorities are those people who follow the directions given in the scriptures. One does not become great by inventing his own method of so-called spiritual elevation. One becomes great by following the scriptures as taught by pure devotees. Nowadays people, they buy some book on their own. In Shiva Purana, it is said Shiva is great. In Devi Mahatmya, it is said Durga is great. Then in some other Purana, it is said some other god is great. So they fight even in the name of Puranas and Vedas and Upanishads. They don't know that one has to understand scriptures under the guidance of an expert spiritual master. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smritir jnana bapoha ancha Vedaisha sarvair ahameva vedyo vedantakrit vedavideva chahai. Krishna says, I am seated in the hearts of every living being and I know the Vedas, I am the compiler of the Vedas and I am to be known by the Vedas. So ultimately, whether it may be Shiva Purana or Devi Mahatmya or any other Upanishad, ultimately by studying all the scriptures, we have to understand that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and we are supposed to surrender to Krishna. Without knowing the goal of the Vedic scriptures, if one just takes one scripture and tries to understand it without knowing the complete picture, one becomes confused, he creates disturbance in his own life and he creates disturbance in the society. So, a great person is that person who understands Vedic scriptures under the guidance of the expert spiritual master coming in one of the 4 paramparas, which I have explained in the second chapter. So, one has to take shelter of such a bona fide spiritual master, understand what is Vedic scriptures, understand Bhagavad Gita properly, and follow according to the guidance given by the spiritual master. In that way, one becomes a great person. Without following the guidance of a spiritual master, no one can become a great man in this world. So, whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So Krishna, he is the Supreme Lord. He has nothing to do in this material world. But we see that Krishna is present in the battlefield as the chariot driver of Arjuna. Why is Krishna taking part in this fight? So that Krishna clears in this section. Name parthasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam varta evacha karmani. O son of Pritha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the 3 planetary systems. Nor am I in want of anything, nor have I need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in work. So Krishna is Supreme Lord, for him there is no need of working. He is self-satisfied. He has nothing to achieve in this material world. Everything belongs to him and he maintains every living being. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bhavanam yo vidadhati kaman. So in the Upanishads it is said that the Supreme Lord Krishna is the chief among all the eternal living beings. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam. He is supremely conscious living being among all the individual conscious living beings. What's the difference between us and God? Eko bahunam yo vidadhati kaman. He is the one singular supreme person who satisfies the desires of all living beings. So he is the satisfier of the desires of every living being. He himself is self-satisfied and he can satisfy unlimited desires of unlimited living beings. So he has nothing to achieve in this material world. Even then, we see that Krishna is also engaged in working. Why does he do it? It is just for the matter of setting the right example so that people can follow. So Krishna says, if he doesn't perform this duty of a Kshatriya, if he doesn't act, what happens? Krishna says, Yadi hyaham na varteyam jatu karmanya tandritaha mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvashaha. For if I did not engage in work, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. Utsideyurime loka nakuryam karma chedaham sankarasya cha kartasyam upahanyami maaf prajaha. If I should cease to work, then all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would also be the cause of creating unwanted population and I would thereby destroy the peace of all sentient beings. So Krishna is explaining that if he did not act as a Kshatriya and set a right example, what would happen? Certainly all men would follow Krishna's path. They would say, oh, Krishna only did not do his duty. Why should we do our duty? In that way, what would happen? Utsideyo rime loka nakuryam karma chedaham samkarasya cha kartasyam upahanyam imapajahan. If I should cease to work, then all these worlds would be put to ruination. And I would also be the cause of creating unwanted population. So there would be mass of men who would tell that Krishna did not fight, Krishna did not do his duties, so why are you telling us to do our duties? In that way, there would be unwanted population created who would only create disturbance in the society. So to set the right example, even though Krishna is Supreme Lord, when he appears within this human society, he follows the standard rules and regulations given in the scriptures for the human beings and for making spiritual progress. So Krishna follows these routine instructions, just like if we study Krishna's daily activities. It's explained in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna would rise early, 1.5 hours before sunrise. He would take bath, then he would go and visit various temples. He would offer his respects to his elderly fathers and mothers. So, and then he would offer them gifts. He would meet brahmanas, he would gift them, he would give them in charity grains and cows. Then he would go to his assembly house and then conduct his kingly duties. So Krishna performed all the duties of a householder very, very nicely. So in that way, Krishna set a perfect example of how one should live while living in this material world and make spiritual progress. So further Krishna says, Sakta akarmanya vidvamso yatha kurvanti bharata kuryad vidvams tatha saktas chikirshur loka sangraham. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, similarly, the learned may also act, but without attachment for the sake of leading people on the right path. As I was explaining, that generally in this material world, people are very ignorant about aim of life. They work for the sake of achieving some results. So Krishna is telling, Saktaha karmani avidvamso yatha kurvanti bharata. With great attachment, people work hard for achieving the desired results. So Krishna is telling, Kuryad vidvam sata saktas chikirshur loka sangraham. Similarly, learned may also act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. The difference between learned and not learned is, learned people do their duties without attachment to the results. So whether it is success or failure, they are unaffected. On the other hand, those who are not learned, they are attached to the results. When they get the results, they become very elevated and they become very proud and they glorify themselves that I worked hard and achieved it. And when they don't get the desired result, they become very sad, morose, and they start blaming everyone else. So in this way, the learned, they suffer the results of the work. On the other hand, the learned men, they are not at all affected by the results. They are always equipoised. So being equipoised is very, very essential to become detached from this material world and elevate spiritually. So Krishna says, Na buddhi bhedam janayed ajnanam karma sanginam joshet sarva karmani vidvan yukta samachara. Let not the wise disrupt the minds of the ignorant who are attached to fruitive action. They should not be encouraged to refrain from work, but to engage in work in the spirit of devotion. So, because the general mass of people, they are attached to the results, so they have to be encouraged to work, and gradually they should be trained so that in such a way that they can offer the results of that work to please the Supreme Lord. So they should be encouraged to engage in work in the spirit of devotion. So that is called Karma Yoga. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashah ahankara vimodhatma karthahanniti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities, which are in actuality carried out by nature. Krishna is clearly explaining, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashah ahankara vimodhatma kartahamiti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities. Actually, whatever actions we perform in this material world, it is because of the modes of material nature which are influencing us to act in that way. So, those who are in ignorance, they act in a one particular way. Those are in the mode of passion, they act in one more way. Those are in the mode of goodness, they act in a different way. So all these things will be elaborately described in the upcoming chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. Here Krishna is explaining that those are in ignorance, they think that I am the doer of everything. Actually, behind the result of any action, there are many factors. So one should understand that I am only one of the factors of action, and there are so many other factors for the result that has evolved out of those actions. So those who are ignorant, they think that I am the doer, but in actuality, it is a material nature behind the results. So the bewildered soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer, which are in actuality carried out by nature. Tattvavittu mahabhaho guna karma vibhagayo guna guneshu vartanta iti matvana sajjate. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. So very clearly Krishna is telling, Tattvavittu mahabhaho guna karma vibhagayo guna guneshu vartanta iti matvana sajjate. Those who are in knowledge, they know that I am spirit soul, part of Krishna. My duty is to serve Krishna. As long as I am in the material body, I have to use my body, my mind, my senses. Using this yantra, this material body is a vehicle, it's an instrument. So he utilizes his body for serving Krishna in this material world. He does not use this body just like ignorant people, those who don't know that I am spirit soul trapped in the body. They think that I am the body and they want to enjoy the bodily pleasures. So a learned man, he does not use the body and his senses for sense enjoyment. He uses the senses for pleasing Krishna. So this is the difference between a learned man and a not learned man. Then further Krishna says, Prakriter guna sammudha sajjante guna karmasu tana kritsna vido mandan kritsna vinna vichalaye. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. So Krishna is telling that those who are ignorant, they are to be allowed to do their duties and one should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. So Krishna is now concluding, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasyadhyatma chetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatajvaraha. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with mind intent on me, and without desire for gain, and free from egoism and lethargy, fight. Here we can see the desire of Krishna, that he has assembled all the kings together in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and he wanted to destroy all the evil kings, and he wanted to establish Pandavas as the emperors and allow them to rule over the world, so that they will establish religious principles in the society and then encourage the masses to become pure devotees, and in that way they could encourage people to become pure devotees of Krishna and achieve ultimate success in human life. So that is the duty of kings. But these so-called kings who were all present at that time, they were all evil-minded, selfish. They wanted to enjoy the material resources for their own pleasures without doing their duties as a true king. A true king is a representative of Krishna. So they were not at all religious. So Krishna wanted to punish them. So he had assembled all of them together, and he wanted Arjuna to be instrument in destroying all these evil-minded kings. So he is now telling that Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya abhyatma chetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatajvara. So Krishna is encouraging that you give up your false egoism out of ignorance, being attached to body and bodily pleasures. You are declining to fight. Give up this false ego, give up lethargy, and offer everything, surrender everything to me and just do as I say. And Krishna is telling that you find. And Krishna says, Ye me matamidam nityam anutishtanti manava shraddhavanto na suyanto muchyante tebi karmabhihi. One who executes his duties according to my injunctions and who follows this teaching faithfully without envy becomes free from the bondage of fruitive actions. So clearly Krishna has described in this chapter how one can be free from the bondage of work. Whatever work we do creates a reaction. So Krishna has taught in this chapter that we have to work and offer the results of our work as a sacrifice to the Supreme Lord. In that way, we will get all the resources which we require to live happily in this world and gradually elevate spiritually and achieve liberation. So Krishna is telling, Ye me matam idam nityam anutishtanti manavaha shraddhavanto anasuyanto muchyante tepi karmabhihi. So those who follow these teachings faithfully, they become free from bondage of fruitive actions. And Krishna says, Yet vetad abhyasuyanto nanutishtanti me matam sarva jnana vimodhamstan vidhi nashtana chetasaha. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not practice them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled and doomed to ignorance and bondage. So for our benefit, Krishna is very nicely, very clearly explaining how the whole thing is set up in this material world. If we do not take Krishna's instructions faithfully and follow, and on the other hand, if we envy Krishna and reject Krishna's teachings, the result is that we will be bereft of all knowledge, befooled and doomed to ignorance and bondage. Further Krishna says, Sadrisham cheshtate swasya prakriter jnanavanapi prakritinyanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows his nature. What can repression accomplish? So everyone has to act according to his own nature. We cannot sit quietly without action. So better that we perform our duties with detachment and offer the results to please Krishna. That is better, that is Karma Yoga. Indriyasyendriyasyarthe ragadveshau vyavasthitau tayornavasham agachetau yasya paripanthinau. Attraction and repulsion for sense objects are felt by embodied beings, but one should not fall under the control of senses and sense objects because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. So as I was explaining, that a learned man, he knows that I am spirit soul within this material body, I am trapped in this material body, I have nothing to do with this material body. As long as I am in this material body, I will utilize my knowledge acquiring senses and working senses. There are 5 jnana indriyas and 5 karma indriyas. So this body is made of these 10 senses. And then there is subtle body which is made of mind, intelligence and false ego. So he uses this gross body and subtle body for the sake of pleasing Krishna under the direction of a expert spiritual master. A bona fide spiritual master, he knows how to engage his disciple in serving Krishna. So under the guidance of a guru, we have to learn how we have to lead our lives from morning till night, how I should be engaged in my daily activities so that I can gradually become purified, detached from this body and ultimately get liberated. So that training we have to achieve in this human form of life. But if we do not approach a spiritual master and learn these things, we will be ignorant, we will be thinking that I am this material body and we will fall under the bodily sensual pleasures, and in order to fulfill the demands of the senses, we will be made to work hard, and even after achieving the so-called objects of sense enjoyment, even after enjoying those sense objects, we will not be satisfied because I am different, body is different. Spirit soul is separate, it is different from the material body. How much our sense enjoyment we do, the spirit soul will not be happy. The pleasure of the soul comes by pleasing the Supreme Lord. Happiness of the soul is in pleasing the Supreme Lord. This is the actual way the soul will be happy. But because of ignorance, if we think that I am the body and try to enjoy bodily senses, we will never be happy and we will continue to live in this material world. Again and again we'll be taking birth, again and again we'll be dying. In that way we'll get caught in the cycle of birth and death. Only in human life, if we utilize this material body properly, get trained spiritually, understand who am I, understand who is God, understand what is my duty, and in that way, if we are not trained by a spiritual master, our life will become useless and we will remain unhappy, will always be suffering. So we have to use this human form of life very, very carefully. So Krishna is telling, Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharma swanushtitat swadharme nidhanam shreyaha paradharmo bhayavaha. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though they may be faulty, than another's duties. Distraction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. So Krishna is here concluding that if we are born as a Kshatriya, we have to do Kshatriya's duties. Even though there may be faults, we should continue to do those duties with detachment. If one is a Brahmana, he has to do Brahminical duties. Even though he may not be very expert, he has to continue to do his duties. So Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunaha Paradharmat Swanushtitat. Instead of doing some other duties, it's better that we perform our own prescribed duties, even though there may be some faults. Swadharme Nidhanam Shreyaha Paradharmo Bhayavaha. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duties better than engaging in another's duties. So, sticking to one's own duty teaches us to be loyal, it teaches us to be attached, attached to the scriptural rules and regulations, attached to authorities. So it is good to train ourselves that we follow the authoritative system in the scriptures, so that gradually we will elevate and attach ourselves to the Supreme Lord, develop our love towards the Supreme Lord and become perfectly loyal to Him. That is the perfection of life, to completely surrender to the Supreme Lord Krishna. So this is the end of this section. So we will be understanding the next section in the upcoming videos. Hare Krishna.